It's good to know you could join us again for another great edition of the platform. My name is Sam Omashaye. Welcome to the program. Can the federal government make real its intention to rearrest Nnamdi Kanu? Will this move escalate tension in eastern Nigeria? The Academic Staff Union of Universities is still on a familiar turf of embarking on industrial action. Flood victims in Benue State are in dire need of help. But first, the menu today is our excerpts from my column In Touch, published in the Nation newspaper titled, How Not to Write. In his after-sickness speech, President Muhammadu Buhari seemed to embody the main character in Wole Soyinka's play, King Babu. The man moves from a soldier to a king of democracy. He tries, as Buhari did in his speech, to foist the contradiction on us. A monarch hectors, orders, clads himself in the regalia of the superior. But by using the phrase, quote, dear citizens, unquote, he unveiled in a Freudian moment the basic cartoon of king cohabiting with democrats. Citizens connote equality. Dear invokes affection. But when dear prefaces citizens, the word dear bears the halos of affectionate fellowship. My, however, decapitates everything. It connotes ownership. No one is anyone else's citizen. If he said, dear citizens, then he threw a hand of fellowship. My dear citizens means he owns the citizens, even if it is dear to him. That was where the Freudian movement carried feudal arrogance. That is paternalism, where the leader sees his fellow citizens as beneath him. The French colonies treated the subjects that way in the 20th century, and so bad was it that the West African citizens played children in joining Charles de Gaulle to form an army. They became colonial subjects, helping their masters to stop another force from becoming masters of their masters. I would have dismissed this as the speechwriters or the president's lack of linguistic finesse and naivety. But the presidency has not recalibrated this expression. So I take it that they mean what I analyzed. Or maybe out of sheer cussedness or arrogance, no one wants to own up to the grammatical perversion. Yet, that was not what irked me more in that speech of laconic fuming. It was the wrong use of symbolism in reference to the Ikemba. He said Biafran leader Emeka Ojukwu spent a whole weekend with him in Katsina, and they resolved that Nigeria's unity was non-negotiable. Ojukwu never said in public that Nigeria's future was non-negotiable. He pledged allegiance after he returned from exile and until the death to the unity of Nigeria. It is not the same thing as saying that Nigerian unity was non-negotiable. Ojukwu always re-echoed until he died that he will fight again for Biafra if circumstances recurred. The president was wrong to invoke a voice without a witness. No one was there when the blacks slapped in his Daura home, when they slurped fura, or their throats flushed with lumps of tuwo. That atmosphere of bonhomie did not mean they did not have different views. So, who knows if Ojukwu merely wanted to quote the meeting with polite rhetoric. We never have tapes of such meetings, and we will do well not to distort what happened, especially when they run counter to popular information. Hence, I believe it was wrong for the president to use Ojukwu to make the case against restructuring. Ojukwu has never disavowed Biafra. His army was defeated, not his heart. This writer has often supported the philosophy of Biafra, not the way and manner it was executed by Dinkemba, whom I thought was opportunist. The same way I oppose IPOB, whose leader, ethnic entrepreneur and rabble-rouser, is taking advantage of a people seeking meaning in a country of poor leaders. The president cannot wish away the call to restructure Nigeria merely by hectoring in his angry speech. If he thinks all is well with Nigeria, he must be living in a different country. Just like the Roman leader Caligula, who thought he was such a hero because he was adored in the early days of his reign, he started to replace the statues of great Roman leaders with his own. Buhari's followers swoon and carp and drink water from unsanitary ground in homage to him. These same people cannot pay their bills in hospitals and secure good education. We have to make the distinction between hero worship and human woes. In the same speech, he equated the herdsmen and farmers, yet the herdsmen rapine farmers and their goods. They invade, kill, maim, and rape farmers. Farmers are not the hostile ones. To speak of farmers-herdsmen clash is rhetorically wrong. It connotes moral equivalency, just like Trump equates white supremacists with anti-fascist protesters. The attackers are the offenders. I expected an all-day update on his health, and we had nothing. We paid the bill, and we need to see the accounts. The speech is an example of how not to write a presidential speech.
Nnamdi Kanu's freedom may soon be short-lived if the Federal High Court in Abuja grants the request of the federal government to revoke the bail of the self-acclaimed leader of Biafra. Nnamdi Kanu has flagrantly disobeyed court orders and flouted all his bail conditions. The news of an intention to rearrest him has further stirred more controversy. The Igbo socio-cultural group Okezie and the pro-Biafra group Indigenous People of Biafra (IPOB) have condemned the federal government's moves to rearrest IPOB leader Nnamdi Kanu, describing it as the height of hypocrisy. Okezie says Nnamdi Kanu, as a citizen of Nigeria, is free to hold any point of view, no matter how displeasing to anyone, so long as they are not inciting or provoking criminal activities.
First, Nnamdi Kanu says that outside eastern Nigeria is a zoo, and I does not believe in Nigeria. Yet, when he was released, he did not like the bail terms and went to court in the same country that he does not believe has legitimacy. Well, that same court is what is asking him to abide by those rules. If you want to abide by the rules of the court, then you have to challenge it. And if you have to challenge it, until your wishes are granted, you have also to obey the terms of that court. In other words, Nnamdi Kanu cannot appropriate and reprobate at the same time. It is wrong for Okezie to make false equivalency here. The case against Nnamdi Kanu and those of those people in the north, the Arewa youths, were a different case. So you cannot equate them together. Those people are not leaving the country. So you cannot equate them. If you are trying to make a case against hate speech, that's a different context. So we should not be hypocritical here.
The Academic Staff Union of Universities is sticking to its guns, insisting the federal government honors the agreement it entered with lecturers in 2009. Negotiations and talks to end the strike have been deadlocked. The Minister of Labour and Employment, Chris Ngige, have failed to pacify angry lecturers and persuade them to return to the classroom. ASUU appears to be the only union in Nigeria that has embarked on more strikes, yet their demands are never fully met.
If the federal government had an agreement with ASUU, the federal government will have to abide by its own agreement. That is honor. If you agreed on something, you have to do something. ASUU on its own side should also understand that the conditions of the economy at the time the thing happened, that is the agreement, is different from it is now. So there has to be a meeting of minds, and that means compromise on both sides. If each side is rigid, there's no conclusion can be made and no benefit to our economy. We should be aware of that. Another issue is ASUU calls for restructuring in Nigeria. ASUU calls for justice in Nigeria. ASUU calls for federalism in Nigeria. Yet, when it comes to asking for money ASUU becomes a unitarist. They don't want every state to decide what kind of salary based on the economy and the resources of that environment. So somebody in the University of Gombe who is a lecturer will now earn the same salary with somebody at the University of Lagos, where the rent in Gombe is probably 10 times cheaper than the rent in Lagos. So ASUU should stop being hypocritical. The federal government too should understand that it has an educational system to cater to. The calendars were just beginning to harmonize. Now this strike has now destroyed the rhythm of schooling at the university level. Both sides must understand that Nigeria is better and bigger than all of them.
There is a weighty allegation hanging on the neck of the federal government. Amnesty International says the government is responsible for enforced disappearance of persons, which is being perpetrated by the agencies of the federal government, and this is prohibited under the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance, to which Nigeria is a signatory. According to Amnesty International research, most enforced disappearances take place in the conflict-ridden northeast of Nigeria, where young men are often seized by the military after being accused of affiliation to the armed group Boko Haram. The organization obtained details of men, women, and children who are victims of enforced disappearance in other parts of Nigeria. According to figures provided to Amnesty by the Islamic Movement of Nigeria, at least 600 of their members' whereabouts are not known since the clashes with the military in December 2015 in Zaria, Kaduna State.
Simple and simple and simple. This is a case of failure of intelligence and also a case of paranoia. If you have to arrest somebody, take the person to court. If you suspect the person, take him to court. Don't just pick up a person and let the person disappear. We had these problems all over the South in those days, where even police in Lagos would just pick somebody on the guise of wandering. This is supposed to be a free country. If people have been arrested, let them be prosecuted. Don't just pick people and cut them off from their families without any sense of what the law wants them to do. So if Amnesty International comes with this report, there must be a basis for it, and the federal government must be sure to distinguish between paranoia and pursuit of Boko Haram culprits.
Benue State has been submerged by flood waters. More than 100,000 people are homeless as a result of heavy rains over the past 2 weeks, with the level of the Benue River rising. President Muhammadu Buhari has directed the National Emergency Management Agency to immediately mobilize personnel and resources to come to the aid of the victims of the flooding that occurred in Benue State, which rendered many people homeless. The government of the day in Benue State says it already knows why the floodwaters displaced residents. The government is pointing fingers. The governor's chief press secretary alleged that 2 billion naira ecological fund released by the federal government for the state was diverted in 2013 under the then governor Gabriel Suswan. While the blame game continues, displaced residents wait till the floodwaters recede and then they can count their losses.
This is a humanitarian problem. We have it in Asia, where a third of a whole country is now, the whole town is now down in flood. In the United States, we have flood in Houston, a big city, the fourth biggest city in the United States, submerged in water with all the humanitarian tragedies being thrown out in the news. And all other parts, including rural Texas, have been affected. Also, in Louisiana, it has been affected. Now at home, while we should be taking care of our own, we are still squabbling over the money that should be allotted to taking care of people. People are already mobilizing. They are already mobilized. The federal government has been there. The president of the United States has been there. Our president has gone to Daura but he has not gone there and not gone to Benue. So it's not just by mobilizing, it was showing presence in the place and mobilizing resources. This is not time to talk about where did the money go. It is what money can we mobilize now for the over 100,000 people who are now in the danger of being submerged to death. Now, coming up is the big talk. I enjoyed an interesting conversation I had with the governor of Abia State, who is passionate about promoting homemade products.
I want to get to a point where specialization will be brought to bear in all of the things we do.
The first cartoon is a sketch from Muyiwa Adetula. Here it satirizes the People's Democratic Party and its declaration to regain power at the center by 2019. PDP here is portrayed as a broken down boss that is weighed down again by an overload of baggage of corruption, Boko Haram, foreign debt, and so many more. Here also is a picture of a man labeled the masses looking at PDP's struggle to move a broken down vehicle. The masses say, double wahala for dead body. That's an echo of Fela. The second cartoon is from Tunji Aziz. This one talks about the rats that have chased President Muhammadu Buhari out of office. Here, a rat poison vendor is heading to ASUU Rock with a variety of rat killer poisons, and his friend looking at him in shock and asks, all these for ASUU Rock, Mr. Rat Killer. The rat killer vendor replies, you want to compare ASUU Rock rats with church rats? So you see that it's just talking about the fact that it's not only the equipment is carrying, also going there with bags to take some other things other than rats. We hear stories of disasters, both natural and human-induced tragedies. Oftentimes, they become a unifying force among the population. Earthquakes, fire, floods, tsunamis, typhoons, accidents, terrorist attacks, and some more are the type of disasters the world grapples with. In some cases, the response to this tragedy are swift and timely, but in other climes, authorities are reluctant to respond. One interesting thing is the global outpouring of sympathy when disaster comes. The world mourned with the United States of America after 9/11. The tragic incident dominated major news headlines for a long time. When France was attacked, the world stood still, and there was a trending #prayer for Paris in the social media space. Countries rallied in solidarity for Belgium. London was comforted in its time of grief. Today, the attention is on Texas. Hurricane Harvey is still wreaking havoc, causing the loss of property worth over $75 billion. The world is uniting for Texas. Donations are pouring in for displaced and distressed persons. The news is everywhere. The United States President Donald Trump has pledged to donate $1 million to Texas recovery. NFL player J.J. Watt has already raised some $13 million to support affected persons in Texas. The death toll is over 30, and the attention on Texas today is overwhelming. Nigeria has suffered its own losses. Boko Haram war is no longer a global concern. Thousands have died in the northeast, and many more are displaced. The world is not talking about them. Or could it be that they have forgotten? Homegrown efforts to provide relief to victims of disasters are in itself a disaster. We cannot forget the suspended secretary to the federal government, Babachi Lawal, who is accused of using 200 million naira to clear invasive grass in a camp for the internally displaced. Officials are often accused of siphoning resources meant to aid victims of disaster for their own selfish need. Could it be that Nigerians have developed a thick skin to disasters happening around them? But many people are quick to stand in solidarity with the US and other European countries. When disaster strikes, Benue State is flooded, many people are displaced, property destroyed, and some deaths reported. But no one is talking about it. The people abroad we show love to are too busy to reciprocate, or maybe they don't really care about us. Sierra Leone is yet to recover from flood and landslides that killed more than 600 people, and many more are still missing. There was no global support. The Eiffel Tower did not light up in solidarity. Big Ben clock in London did not stop ringing in solidarity with Sierra Leone. Disaster in Africa never makes headline around the world, or hardly. But disaster outside Africa makes headlines in Africa. We love them more than we love ourselves. Big talk this week is with Governor Okezie Victor Ikpeazu. He is an advocate of made in Abia goods, and he walks his talk too. I want to start by asking you about how were you distracted by the rather prolonged judicial rigmarole over authenticating who won the governorship election?
Thank you very much. First, I want to start by thanking God Almighty for His grace and strength, and then thank Abia people who stood by us all through the time that battle lasted. First of all, the strength of our administration was that we thought about what we needed to do in Abia, and then set out to map out a strategy that could help us achieve that as quickly as possible, all things being equal. We did not reckon with such protracted legal battle, but because we had a clear agenda about what we wanted to do, we had our pillars of development, we had our strategy, we had our enablers. All we needed to do was from time to time make sure that we are on course. And we realized that after a while that it was beyond the normal legal battle, that there was something beneath it to deliberately make sure that we don't get to achieve our objectives, so that when we were called upon in future to give account of our stewardship, we will have problems. So with this mindset, we started to put a light to their ploy, we started to put a light to their handiwork, and to God be the glory, we were able to keep the steering of statecraft steady, and I am sure we are not exactly where we would have loved to be, but we've certainly moved from one point to the other.
Yeah, having spent over 2 years in office, you're one of the few governors whose vision was very easy to encapsulate. It's about ownership, made in Abia, made in Aba, and eventually became a kind of metaphor for ownership. Can you let our audience know how you came to really formulate this vision?
In the first place, I took time to think about the effort of successive administrations driving one policy or the other forward in Nigeria. And I saw the frustration of not meeting their targets, their objectives, and that we were drifting, as it were, as a country. And so I decided to do some empirical study about what led to what and why, and what is it that we've not done. Because I did not want to go about solving problems doing the same thing that people had done in the past. So I found out one thing that was clear, which was missing, and that is to drive development from a socio-cultural perspective. You know, everybody has identity. Your voice is different from my voice. Just like the stripe of the mother zebra is different from the stripe of the calf, you know, and our fingerprints. You know, so even looking at Nigeria, from subnational government of 36 states and the federal government, everybody must have a fingerprint. What are those things in Abia that we can do better than other people? Are there things that God is giving to us which many people do not have? You know, that's a good starting point. You know, so it helped us to define the pillars of development. And we said to ourselves, well, for these things, we must pursue them in a way that people had not done before. And that is to say that our people left the African maxim that your mother's soup is essentially sweet. You know, so coming to the marketplace to criticize your mother and say that her soup is, it doesn't mean that you don't guide, advise, criticize if it is positive. Mama, this was wonderful, but a little pepper will do and all that. But fundamentally, you know, you just have to own up that which belongs to you. Because that is the only thing that people can learn from you. The other things you see is effort to learn, you know, what other people have done. And you can't reinvent the wheel. So we needed to Abialize, Nigerianize our efforts, you know, and that led us to that. The second one was a little bit spiritual, you know, because I have seen firsthand the effort that the average Abia youth, the average Nigerian youth deploy in creating one thing or the other. He's just like a painter, spending all the time in the night creating, you know, and then painting it and bringing it out, and then all of a sudden your father says this is arrant nonsense, you know. So I saw the effort. I saw that some of these people do 16 hours on the machine, do 16 hours trying to create a shoe, from design to sewing and all that, filing and everything that needs to be done. And then as that person is doing it, sweat is dropping on that article, and only for them to present it to me as their governor. And then I'm unable to tell the world that this is from my... I said that this will be the height of the service. It will be very uncharitable and uncompromising for me to do that. Therefore, I said, well, for two reasons. One, to salute the effort and courage of the Nigerian youth, the Abia youth, the Aba youth. The other one is that, yes, something that is employing about 1 million people should not be taken for granted. It's not a frivolous effort, you know. But beyond that also, we can create prosperity if we do that properly. In a country with 180 million people, if we wear an average of 2 pairs of shoes, even 50% of the people, look at school children that are going barefooted and people are ready to, you know. So I made in my life the essence of what we were doing. And then I thank God that it's yielding some results.
Now, one of the interesting things about it is that you've taken Aba as a focal point of development, which is interesting. And it is said, some people have said, and then your predecessor used to say, that Abia is a state where nobody is unemployed. But basic to all of this is also the fact that there's still a lot of environmental necessities that need to be put in place in order for this to happen. How far have you gone? How far can you go?
Yes, we have defined what we need to do in the short term, what we need to do in the midterm, and what we need to do in the long term. And for us, basically, if you are driving trade and commerce, if you are driving small-scale manufacturing, road infrastructure is key, because you must be able to move the goods from one point to the other. And then you must have to put in place the kind of roads that can give confidence to those who are investing and those who are in the environment. And that's then beyond that, you must also tackle education and health. So for us in Abia, strategically speaking, education is a pillar as well as an enabler. You know, a pillar in the sense that we want to create an education hub around Abia State where people can come establish schools and then the schools will find relationship in faculties that are around, great collaborations with schools outside, and then that'll be that. But also we want to educate our people in the kind of things we want them, in the direction we want them to go. So if we are going to be technically minded, if we are going to mechanize the process of shoemaking, garment making and all that, it means we need a multi-mix of skilled labor, which is critical. And even for nothing, I want to speak to Abia as a place where people can go to establish companies just because there is a critical mass of skilled labor. Yeah. And we could do that. And that was why we started from the first week with what we call E4E, Education for Employment, where the technical schools are renovated and crafted in a way that they train people to become skilled, so that at the secondary school level, once they graduate, you have people who can become proficient carpenters, proficient electricians, and proficient. And our E4E graduates today, as far as we are concerned by government policy, are passed through NAPTEP exam. 500 people went for the last exams and 498 passed. So what it means is also that our people are embracing it. And then we have a database under that E4E office that has profiled 34,000 youths according to local government skill sets, qualification, and all that, all kinds of proficiencies and things. So eventually, going forward, Abia will become a society that is driven by technical capabilities from middle cadre to, but we have problem with power. Because in all of this, you need power to drive. If I close my eyes and open it and then all the roads are good, if I close my eyes and open it and then the skill set is there, I wouldn't have power. So we're also focusing on the kind of alliances that we can create to deal with power, starting from like what I like to say, what we have in our hands, which is the geometric power. I have driven the campaign to revive geometrics and get it up and running through the presidency to Cairo, where we have Afrexim Bank that has agreed to invest now, so that EEDC and geometrics can solve their problems and then our people will have light. But beyond that, I'm also speaking to people who can give us lights in modular fashion. Of course, there's gas embedded in some of our local governments. We want to see if we can get partners that can convert gas to energy, and in the near future be able to also to convert waste to energy. All of them is to bring about power, starting from our industrial zones. There is this conversation around the hen and the egg, which one comes first? The power we seek in Nigeria and industrialization, is it power for industrialization or industrialization for power? You understand? So the Nigerians can't pay for power, we wouldn't pay for power. The power we seek is the power to watch home video, relax, watch TV, enjoy our air condition, Premier League. But the cost of power is slightly costlier than what we are willing to pay as Nigerians. But if you have industries, power will come. Because power vendors are everywhere, looking for those who can pay. So if you build a cluster of industries, power will come. And that is the strategy that we are deploying in our industrial clusters. Now,
what you are doing is meeting generations of people who have been involved in this inventiveness. And what you are bringing to bear is probably new to them. There's going to be a learning gap and a generational conflict. Those people who feel that they are going to do things the way they've been doing it. And now you are bringing a certain new infrastructure, new way of thinking. Are you going through some kind of cultural conflict between these two generations?
Seriously. And it's a major source of frustration. But I anticipated it. I'll tell you something. One of the most difficult things to do in my part of Nigeria is to move market from one place to the other. If you create an Eldorado, build Walmart, any kind of, call it anything, and ask the average person in the area, oh, you are doing business in a waterlogged area, come and see. You can go to a glass house where air conditioning, everything. The man will not go. If you use tax force, he will not go. If you knock down the place, and you will see that The individual may move, but the soul of the market won't go. We have such experiences everywhere. So there's, like you said, education experience, cultural gap. Some people are attached to the old way and where they are doing their business. Who knows? Where some of them are traditional religionists. They can have their little gods buried there, and they think it's part of why they are succeeding in that. But whatever it is, our strategy is to show, lead by example, and show them some of the results that are possible. I've held conversations where we have issues bringing in the export potential and export proceeds of the average trader into the export basket and calculation and statistics of the federal government. The problem with that issue is that the people don't feel that there is ownership on the part of government. Government has not invested in their enterprise one way or the other. You've not provided electricity. You've not done enough in terms of infrastructure. There is nothing I rely on you as government. You know, and lo and behold, it's my private business, which I inherited from my father, and I've been doing my shoes and selling to my customer from Benue Republic. So why should I declare to you who I'm selling to and how much is paying me? Assuming he's charging me, it's not your business.
It's not your business.
You know.
I've been doing this for a long time.
I've been doing it for a long time.
Your business.
Yes. So the place to start is for government to invest first. You must meet them up front. The process of acculturation and changing perspectives and thinking is a major issue anywhere in the world. Right now, we are engaging directly with the shoemakers. We're engaging directly with the garment makers. And the next point, as I speak now, we are planning a show in New York, a fashion show, where made in Abia shoemakers this year will be in New York, and then with their models and all that. Then beyond that, you can begin the conversation of you designer, you've been to Abuja, you displayed very well and people accept your products. Now your brand is in Abuja, is in New York, with all the Facebook and online marketing platforms. By the way, we have about 6 online marketing platforms today. Some of them are launching in more than 10 countries simultaneously. So now, for you to enter this online marketing platform, for you to be part of what we are doing in our trade shows going forward, you must subject yourself to this level of finishing and packaging and all that. And we're also thinking about helping them to source inputs, critical inputs like glue. You know, some companies are producing glue in Nigeria. We could hold discussions with them and say, give us grade A glue for whatever thing it will cost, and ensure that people who are doing the kind of shoes we are marketing most essentially. So we are prepared to grade our products. We're prepared to have, but then we will say that all our products are A, but we could have A++, A+, and then A. And then as you progress, the A shoes we can give to our children to do school container, all those kind of things. But high-end fashion shoes will definitely be the A++ shoes. You know, the kind of shoes that will be the A++ shoes, and then the A++. And they will see that there is a graduation in how much they earn. The essential thing is for money, demand, to drive, you know, perfection and proficiency down the line. You know, so it's not something that we can achieve in one day. But by the time we get to the national consciousness that this is what you are producing for your brother. There's a saying in my place that you don't sell a faulty bicycle or a faulty cock or hen within the compound. Yes. If you were to sell it, you can sell it. Yeah, so, but if you sell shoes, and I bought this shoe from Shoe Planet, I'll call Shoe Planet, come and see the kind of shoe you're making. You know, and then you quickly take it and do again. Yes. You remember the state of marketing and businesses change overseas now is that you can be given a number and some warranty. Yes. If something happens in 1 year, with that warranty number, you come back and get that is marketing at its peak. We are certainly not there yet, You know, but by the time we get insurance companies and all kinds of things coming into what we are doing, we will see that we can really quickly, within 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, get there. But the important thing to do is to build the base of the pyramid, which is what we are doing. Get everybody that is capable of creative ability to come into the fray and begin to do things, and then patronize those things which they do.
You need infrastructure. You still need infrastructure to do this, because there was this story, this thing you spoke about 1 million shoes and products being shipped out, and some of these don't get recorded in a formal sector as part of our foreign exchange earning. You know, how do you move in terms of, and first of all, set of resources to get the infrastructure, that's the hard infrastructure, and the soft infrastructure like policy that has to work with the federal government, information flows and so on. How are you bringing all of this into this vision?
It's not very easy, but it's not also very difficult. Reason is this: there's a saying in my place that you can't grab the air in a snare if you set a trap and you want to, yes. But that is not when you're talking about balloons and tires and all that. You can actually do it. So the thing, first of all, is to get them to agree to formalize their location. It's like what happens in revenue. You have what they call the flying revenue and all that. For you to change revenue window from flying, you must be able to get it stationary. So if you want to tax a taxi driver, get him while he's in his house sleeping. Let the number of his house be his identity, not his vehicle. Because he could to go to Onitsha, not come back that day, and pay tax at Onitsha. So let us see if we can build industrial clusters, formalize industrial clusters, and then get them to come to the industrial clusters and begin to produce. That is why we are doing the Umukaleka industrial cluster. Once we get them into the Umukaleka industrial cluster, like I said earlier, that will be a resource center. In that resource center, there will be computers. Because we want to appeal to the children of these present-day shoemakers who could be graduates, computer savvy, ready to join issues with world designers about designs of shoes and all that on the computer. And they come out and tell their father in the workshop, this is the way it's going now. So once we can have such a resource center, we will create a desk for standard organization, all that, provided they have come to terms with our vision, which is to make them enablers and drivers of SMEs instead of bottlenecks and stumbling blocks. So you can't force government policy regarding the exchange between Naira and dollar and how you want them to be part of your books on the people at this stage. Gradually, you must invest in their enterprise. And the kind of investment you will do in their enterprise is, one, create the industrial clusters, help them procure the equipment for automation. And helping them to procure the equipment for automation can only be done if we think about a smart way of funding industrialization and mechanization of the process of shoemaking for small and middle-scale enterprises. It's not by asking them to come take 100 million and then pay a counterpart of another 50 or 100 million, then you will do or bring collateral. No. You can say, I will give you equipment worth this amount of money. That equipment is constant, it's immovable, reasonably so. And you could establish an office in the state and people can go and see. So you know what that machine is doing every day. And you can now take your money as the machine is working and as people are using it. then you would have invested in that person's business. So when you call him for a meeting another day and say, right now, yesterday we were talking about equipment, you saw we provided. Yesterday we were talking about comfortable building and warehouses, you saw we provided. Yesterday you were talking about power, you've seen that power is here. Now that you're selling to this Cameroonian, we're not interested in how much you're selling. Rather, we're interested in making sure you sell at the right price, not lower than what others are selling all over the world. So we advise on this price. And the man says, I'm willing to produce at this price. It's okay. If you're producing at this price, let him pay us in foreign exchange. If he pays us in foreign exchange, if you like, you get the foreign exchange and use it to buy another thing, input. Or if you like, you change it to Naira, you'll be happy. But the one is the federal government will know that you have made so yes. You must have a history of relationship. Otherwise, you don't start from the end of the trumpet and you are blowing towards where you're supposed to. No. Because you don't have a relationship, you don't have a buy-in, you have not invested anything. So whatever you are coming to do, the Nigerian factor will tell the person, he wants to take my business away. What is my? In fact, he won't resume. You won't see him there the next day. So it's something that we must think through and then say to ourselves, this is the stages through which we will go. Because you are dealing with human behavior and you don't decree human behavior by fiat. You don't, you must hold a conversation because we are starting something that is new, yes, as it were.
Now, all of this boils down to how to bring prosperity to the state and in the country at large. Now, do you have any projections of IGR from this?
Yes, unfortunately, what they are doing, apart from personal income tax, is not calculated or factored in our IGR growth profile today. Because if you're inviting a child to the table and you're wearing a big stick, the child will run away. Eventually, the big stick will come. But we are, as I speak now, investing in their enterprise. We are partnering with them. We are trying to do confidence building. Because for a long time, Nigerians lost faith in government and the things government do. It could be sins of our forefathers. It could be anything, but that is the situation. That is a sad story. And each time Nigeria comes up with policy, I laugh. I laugh because they don't see the fatigue. They don't see the fatigue, the mentality of the average Nigerian. Some Nigerians they have lost faith. You announce government scholarship, they don't even want to apply. They say nothing will happen. After I'm not from so state, I don't know anybody at Abuja. So there is, there's a lot of there's hot knife in our butter, and we need to take it easy. So we need a lot of confidence building. We need a lot of explanation to do. We need to meet them up front, and then create a tradition. China has created perfect relationship between government and private sector. Government and private sector in China are like husband and wife. You can't talk to anybody in China, you are speaking to government. If you speak to government, you are speaking to... And if any of them is challenged, the government will be there as a big brother. So that is the confidence and the feeling that the average businessman needs to have. But is it true? Whenever they see standard organization, NAFDAC, they take to their heels. What comes to their memory? Or when they see federal inland revenue, what comes to their, Yes, I think that the federal inland revenue people and all these kind of people should start by providing advisory services. Oh, no, we've not come to. There is no tax for you this year. We'll give you comfort. Do this and this. And then you're able to. But once you now say by estimation or by what I had, it will continue to create the kind of problems that we have.
Now, a personal question. You didn't have much experience in politics coming in like a bureaucrat. And then you're also a scientist. Now, speak to how all of these all of these have helped you in getting into this shoe you have now worn?
Well, thank you. In the first place, I think that I've always had relationships and associations with politicians. My father ran an election in the 60s, county council elections, and he's been politically active, even as a passive observer in those days. He was in AP and I was in SDP, and all of that. And I have always craved for an opportunity to make a difference, you know. And then what my background as a scientist has done in all of this is that I tend to interrogate issues deeper. I look for the empirical data that will back up whatever decisions that we want to take. And then my capacity to do analysis of issues, looking at them and knowing how to respond. I think I've also received a very serious support from my exposure as a scientist. And then I've also kept a very strong tab with that constituency. You may wish to know that I still go to teach biochemistry in my state school from time to time. And that's the way I relax. That's the way, you know, I would never want to go away from, stay out of classroom. No. It's very rewarding and fulfilling. But the most important thing is that I think I have the grace of God upon me, and I hope and pray that remains permanent.
Okay, two more questions. The first one is that how members of your cabinet keyed into your whole idea of patronizing made in Abia? I can see that your shoe is made in Abia.
Yes.
What you're wearing clothes, and then you have proudly Abba. So that is very interesting. You're showing them by example. But have you carried your cabinet along with you along that line? Are they wearing Gucci?
Yeah. Well, my strategy is that of Gideon. I take all my soldiers to the river. Yes. You know, there are things you don't force people to do. But I think the message is strong. It's very compelling. And I've delivered it in such a way that any person who fails to queue up will be seen as less patriotic than the others who queued up. I don't want to force anybody into the fray just because governor is advertising it. I want the belief to come from their belly. Let it come from within them. That is the only way they can propagate it, even in their families. Otherwise, they will see the made in Abia thing as uniform, come to work with it, drop it, and all that. So I want the buy-in of all those who are convinced that this is the way to go. You know, if not for anything, Mr. So I must tell you now, if there's nothing I want you to remember in the course of this discussion and conversation, don't forget that I said that for every dress and shoe I wear, I remember the love and sweat that has dropped on every stitch, coming from my brothers as they strive to eke out a living and make us proud. So this is my way of saluting them and saying that, I mean, yes, well done. I mean, it's good enough reason for me.
Yeah. Now, finally, some people have said your relationship with your predecessor is one of the models of governance these days. How has it worked out?
Well, straight away, he doesn't interfere. He knows there's one governor. He doesn't interfere with the things I do. And then in return, I respect him as an elder statesman, as a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And he understands the powers of a governor. He knows that the best way to deal with a governor is to accord him his respect and independence. And he has really tried to be a man in that respect. So for those who think that it is fashionable to create trouble, my take on it is that I don't think it has to be so.
Thank you very much. We've been talking to Governor Okezie Ikpeazu, Governor of Abia State, and it's been a pleasure having you on this show.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you.
That is the show today. Join us again next week. Follow me also on Twitter at Sam Omashe, and also connect with me on Facebook. And until then, be good.